My son sent me a bottle of craft whiskey for my birthday, the first gift in 3 years of complete silence. I thought it was a gesture of reconciliation, so I passed the bottle to his father-in-law, who really enjoys a good drink. Curtis's reaction when he found out? It sent chills down my spine. The truth behind that betrayal still haunts me. Before we go on, help us grow by subscribing to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Henry Gates, 66 years old, former real estate agent, now retired. I live in an old house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, full of memories of Margot, my lifelong wife. What's left here is silence and that thing called routine. Strong coffee, the newspaper folded on the armchair, sunlight sneaking shyly through the window. I won't lie. Some days, the lack of someone talking just 2 rooms away weighs more than any financial worry. Maybe you get it. When every corner of the house holds a memory, and you learn to even respect the echo of your own footsteps. Growing old like this isn't the end of the road. It's fighting small daily battles against being forgotten, against only being included when it's convenient. Time piles up like dust on the furniture, and every habit, the worn-out slippers, the old records spinning on the turntable, stacked magazines, becomes a kind of private fortress. And no matter how much they say age makes you invisible, there's a quiet strength in preserving dignity. What's hardest is noticing when respect turns into mere formality, and elder abuse hides in almost silent acts. Curtis, that son who once shared long talks with me, cut ties over a house. It's hard to accept that something so concrete, filled with memories of every Christmas and birthday, turned into an emotional battlefield. Now he lives in Chicago, distant, only speaks to me in clipped phrases, like our bond is just a duty. Maybe you've felt it too, when the one who should protect you ends up being the one who hurts the most. That betrayal from an ungrateful son shows how blood is only part of the story. And no matter how hard I try, I can't always tell where his pride ends and the emptiness between us begins. I keep wondering if the bourbon he sent was really a peace offering, or just a cold reply to whatever's left of our past. I don't know about you, but at some point, hope for reconciliation turns into caution. Margot's memory, with her endless patience, still guides me quietly. Even in silence, she's the one keeping my world from falling apart. In the end, when I decided to give the bottle to Melvin, Curtis's father-in-law, a retired teacher and a real bourbon enthusiast, I thought I was doing the right thing. Melvin's always had a nose for complex situations, knows how to tell real value from empty show. I figured it was just another sign of mutual respect between grown men. Funny thing is, sometimes the simplest gestures can hide very different intentions. I didn't suspect a thing, but doubt was already lingering, quiet, waiting for the right time to show itself. Curtis called me on a cold morning, using a surprisingly friendly tone, one I hadn't heard from him in ages. "Dad, did you get the whiskey? Did you like the gift?" For a few seconds it felt like time had rewound, and the wounds between us were starting to heal. He kept asking, with this almost warm curiosity, "Have you tried it yet? I'm really curious what you think." There was something rehearsed about it, but the hope of a fresh start spoke louder. Funny how, even after so much hurt, we still look for signs of redemption in the smallest gestures. That kindness caught me off guard, almost like it really was possible to turn back time. I calmly explained that I hadn't had a drink since Margot passed, and that's why I thought it'd be better to give the bottle to Melvin, his father-in-law, who truly appreciates a rare bourbon. The moment I said I'd passed it along, the whole vibe of the call shifted. That enthusiasm vanished, replaced by an awkward, heavy silence, and his voice turned stiff. "Oh, so he's the one who kept it?" It was like he wasn't ready to hear that. A subtle crack in the act of good intentions. Suddenly, every word out of his mouth sounded careful, like he was monitoring my choices, which always rubbed me the wrong way. The shift was so sharp, it honestly rattled me. After that call, I started noticing how Curtis uses small gestures and subtle hints that slowly wear down your self-esteem. He kept repeating that he had chosen that whiskey especially for me, that he thought I'd appreciate it, with this soft pressure laced with hidden demands. It felt like my polite refusal was taken as a personal insult to his effort. Anyone who's ever received a gift loaded with expectations knows how it turns into a kind of micro-humiliation, a quiet reminder of an emotional debt you never agreed to owe. His silent revenge was starting to show in these seemingly minor details. A few days later, Melvin called saying that after tasting the whiskey, he felt a strange bitterness and an unusual wave of discomfort. He's always been so cautious, never overdoes it with alcohol, so that reaction immediately worried me. I brought it up to Curtis, and to my surprise, he brushed it off, saying Melvin was probably just having an off day, completely dodging any sense of responsibility. That detached attitude, leaving others to deal with the mess, just confirmed a coldness I was starting to recognize. The way he handled it made me even more uneasy. It was like he didn't want me getting too concerned about what really happened. Later that night, Melvin's wife called with a trembling voice, saying he was being taken to the hospital because of some strange symptoms. "Henry, he can't stop vomiting. He's really weak. The doctors want to investigate possible poisoning." My heart raced. Good whiskey isn't supposed to cause a reaction like that, especially not in someone as experienced as Melvin. I spent the whole night replaying that conversation with Curtis in my head. The sudden change in tone, the push behind that special gift. I was starting to realize there might be something much more serious behind that bottle. The feeling that I was caught up in something dangerous, without fully understanding it, was eating me alive. The hospital had that deep smell of disinfectant and worry, the kind that never leaves your memory. Melvin looked visibly weak, skin dull, breathing shallow, and his wife by his side, squeezing my fingers like she was trying to stay grounded. From the moment we walked in, everything felt slower. The nurses, the beeping machines, even the clock on the wall dragged on. She showed me the bottle, wouldn't let them throw it out, and her expression was a mix of fear, disbelief, and the bitter suspicion that creeps in when normal life suddenly breaks apart. I picked up the whiskey bottle carefully, trying not to imagine everything it might represent. I smelled it, expecting something familiar, but was met with an odd, invasive scent, slightly metallic. The color wasn't the usual golden hue either. It was dull, off. Even in his weakened state, Melvin caught my look. "I can't explain it, Henry. It gave me this bad heat inside, like my body instantly rejected it." Those words stayed with me down the hallway, sparking a flicker of doubt that slowly started to grow. The conversations with the medical team only fed my unease. They mentioned symptoms consistent with poisoning, but nothing was definitive. They asked for a list of anything Melvin might have consumed in the past few hours. His wife went over his routine in detail, making it clear the whiskey was the only unusual thing. We left the exam room with more questions than answers, hearing vague promises of a careful investigation. Deep down, all I could think about was protecting whatever was left of everyone's dignity. That night, I kept the bottle on the table, staring at that thin layer of unsteady liquid for a long time. I didn't have the nerve to open it, or to throw it away. In the morning, I picked up the phone, found an old lab contact, and explained everything in a low voice, like confessing something ugly. I was told to keep the bottle sealed and refrigerated until proper testing could be done. I barely slept, torn between guilt for passing on that gift and fear I might be facing something horrifying. How could anyone plan something so cold? That afternoon, while Melvin remained under observation, I submitted the whiskey for toxicology testing. The technician, an experienced man, listened seriously to my story and advised patience. He said advanced substances could take several days to identify. I left the lab feeling like the ground was slipping away, doubts echoing with every step. Have you ever brought in something that seemed normal, hoping to be wrong just so you wouldn't have to carry a certain weight? I truly hoped it was nothing but an unfortunate coincidence. In the days that followed, I spent long minutes just staring at the bottle in the fridge, waiting for the phone call that would bring some kind of answer. I visited Melvin whenever I could, hearing timid reports of improvement or setbacks, and speaking with doctors who always leaned toward caution. I didn't say a word to Curtis, keeping the growing suspicion to myself like a quiet shadow. Sometimes, just looking at that bottle, it felt like I wasn't dealing with a toxic substance, but with the full weight of a broken family. How do you move forward when your own instincts are on high alert? The suspense was almost unbearable, living with doubts, avoiding premature conclusions, yet unable to rule out the worst-case scenario. I felt consumed by the need to know, to leave no loose ends, even knowing the truth might hurt forever. At some point, I realized this wasn't just about Melvin, or a tampered drink. It was about the invisible thread that holds a family together, or pulls it apart. And in that weight, I started to feel the real gap between what should be protection and what sometimes reveals itself as betrayal. The days following the toxicology report were filled with silent unrest. With every passing hour, I dug through memories of past conversations and gestures. I remembered Melvin saying, with a hint of surprise, that Curtis had mentioned a special batch made just for the occasion. That memory, which once seemed like a small detail, now rang like an alarm in the back of my mind. I started realizing that nothing about that gift was random. Everything felt deliberately crafted, with an intention only time could uncover. The feeling of uncovering layer after layer of a scheme consumed me completely. Sitting at the table with papers spread out, I analyzed the bottle label, looking for anything unusual. I photographed every detail, trying to trace where that whiskey came from. The toxicology report wasn't enough anymore. I needed to know exactly how that bottle went from the distillery to my hands. Cautiously, I reached out to an old colleague, now a manager at one of the city's largest distilleries. I explained the situation without raising suspicion, asking about the batch 14 Melvin had mentioned. The phone trembled in my hand as I waited for an answer that could change everything. The contact was helpful and said he'd check the internal records. After a few hours, he got back to me with a response that only deepened my anxiety. Curtis had indeed requested a batch outside the standard system, claiming it was for a personal gift. "It didn't go through internal controls, Henry," he said. "There's no formal record or quality test." The weight of those words made the suspicion feel real, exposing a plan far beyond coincidence. In that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me, as if my whole reality was being rewritten. The coldness it takes to bypass internal systems shook me to my core. As I gathered more information, I decided to compile everything into an envelope. The toxicology report, photos of the label, my conversation log with Melvin, and a detailed account of Curtis's request. I also included Gloria's testimony, Melvin's wife, who described the strange smell, the odd color, and her husband's sudden illness after tasting the whiskey. Each piece of paper told a different side of the story, and together, they formed a wall against forgetting. It felt like assembling a puzzle where every new piece revealed something more disturbing. The table had become a silent courtroom, where evidence piled up relentlessly. I spent several afternoons rewriting the report of everything that happened since receiving the gift. I went back over old conversations with Curtis, especially the one where he said the drink was one of a kind, made just for me. His words felt rehearsed, every pause setting the rhythm of a subtle manipulation. With every line I wrote, I saw more clearly how silent revenge is built, not just through actions, but through intentions woven into the everyday. The full scope of familial abuse revealed itself there, between one paragraph and the next. I felt sick realizing how long I had been manipulated. Gloria turned out to be a key ally. I gathered her statement on Curtis's behavior and the anxiety he showed when he learned the bottle had been passed on to Melvin. Photos of the bottle, conversation logs, and the hospital notes rounded out the set of evidence. Putting this dossier together brought a sense of relief, even if temporary. Knowing the truth was taking shape on paper helped me believe justice might be possible. I looked at it all and thought, no planned gesture stays hidden forever. Her courage to speak up gave me the strength to keep going. The nights had become silent and heavy. The envelope with all the evidence sat on my desk, and every time I walked by, I felt the weight of an impending rupture. I went back over the emails exchanged with the distillery manager, rereading every message to make sure everything was properly documented. It wasn't enough to just gather information. It needed to be organized, precise, ready for whatever came next. That discipline from years of negotiating big contracts helped me stay composed through the pain. The silence in the house echoed the weight of the truths piling up. I moved forward with additional tests to verify the bottle's authenticity and batch origin. The manager sent me an informal report detailing how Curtis had bypassed standard production protocols, leaving no trace in the official records. The reports weren't just about poison anymore. They now tracked the origin of every detail that could implicate the true culprit. Feeling the weight of the method gave me clarity about how serious this was. This wasn't just a family crisis. It was a calculated risk. The documentation kept growing, forming a web of inescapable evidence. Every page was a silent condemnation. With each new detail uncovered, I began to understand the cold logic behind the plan, the careful timing of the gift, Curtis's insistence on who should actually drink the whiskey. I wrote everything down, building a timeline of key events, from the order to the gift, from delivery to the handoff, from illness to suspicion. Piecing it together was painful, because with each step, our family drifted further from anything resembling genuine care. Curtis's distance now took on a different meaning. It wasn't grief, it was strategy. Watching the plan unfold on paper helped me grasp the full scale of the betrayal. Gloria came by one evening and read the entire report by my side. She added details about Curtis's behavior the night he dropped off the gift, recalling a tension that only now made sense. He was different, more impatient, like he was waiting for a reaction that never came. Her input strengthened the case, reinforcing that his actions weren't just suspicious, but cold and calculated. We pieced our memories together in a kind of quiet partnership, both feeling the tension that comes right before resolution. Her presence brought comfort in a moment of deep isolation. I realized the true impact of Curtis's coldness was in the details. The ability to plan in secret, to choose the perfect moment, to orchestrate each move without raising suspicion. I reflected on that as I prepared the final envelope, a kind of memorial to the abuse, the crime, and the courage to face it. There was no more room for doubt. This wasn't an accident or emotional recklessness. It was methodical, a silent execution. The full weight of betrayal and self-defense had reached its peak. The reality of elder abuse took shape in each and every document. At the end of the week, I sat at my desk with the complete dossier in front of me, feeling the weight of everything I had put together. I ran my fingers over the sealed envelope, knowing that inside was the answer to all those months of dread. He knew exactly what he was doing, I whispered to myself. The silence in the room seemed to echo the thought with twice the weight. I knew the next steps would demand more strength than I'd ever needed before. But at least now, honesty was a weapon no one could take from me. The envelope weighed as much as the future of our entire family. With the complete dossier in hand, I reached out to a lawyer specializing in family-related crimes. Dr. Richard Harper had an office downtown and handled sensitive cases with absolute discretion. I explained the entire situation, from the suspicious gift to the compiled evidence about the irregular batch. He reviewed every document with professional focus, taking notes and asking technical questions about the toxicology report. "Henry, you've got a solid case here," he said, adjusting his glasses. "But we need to formalize everything through the proper channels to ensure the evidence holds up." His seriousness reassured me, but it also made the weight of responsibility feel even heavier. Dr. Harper advised that the next step was to discreetly contact the police to open a formal investigation. "We can't go at this alone, Henry. Attempted homicide cases require a strict protocol." He explained the importance of maintaining complete confidentiality until the official investigation began. Any leak could compromise the process and give Curtis time to destroy evidence or create alibis. I left the office with a checklist of procedures and a growing sense that I was finally on the right path. The relief of having professional guidance mixed with the anxiety of what lay ahead. The next morning, with the lawyer by my side, I went to the precinct that handles crimes against persons. The lead officer, Dr. James Whitman, welcomed us into his private office. I presented all the materials, the toxicology report, the distillery's confirmation of the irregular batch, testimonies from Gloria and Melvin, photographs of the bottle, and transcripts of the suspicious conversations. He examined each document carefully, asking specific questions about dates and timelines. "We'll open an investigation immediately," he said, stamping the papers. "But it's critical that you keep this entirely confidential until we gather more physical evidence." Formalizing the case brought relief, but also the realization that there was no turning back. The officer explained that we'd need official statements from all the witnesses involved. Melvin and Gloria were called in to provide formal testimonies about the symptoms, Curtis's behavior, and the circumstances around the gift. They agreed without hesitation, still shaken by the gravity of it all. "We'll do our part to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else," Melvin said, his voice steady despite his lingering weakness. Gloria held my hand as she confirmed her willingness to testify. Their bravery strengthened my resolve to see this through, no matter the impact on the family. In the following weeks, the investigation moved forward quietly. Forensic experts examined the bottle in a specialized lab, confirming not only the presence of the toxin, but also evidence of tampering with the original seal. The distillery provided official documents detailing Curtis's irregular order, including emails and payment records that proved he had bypassed the standard protocol. Every new piece of evidence reinforced the premeditated nature of the crime. I followed every development through my lawyer, feeling a mix of satisfaction that justice was taking shape and deep sadness over the undeniable truth of the family betrayal. It felt like watching the final collapse of everything we once had. The officer proposed a strategy to confront Curtis without alerting him that he was under investigation. "We need a confession or at least conflicting statements we can use in court," Dr. Whitman explained. The plan was to arrange a social gathering where Curtis might feel relaxed enough to talk about the gift and his motivations. Melvin, now recovered and ready to help, suggested a charity dinner that traditionally brought our extended family together. "It'll seem natural for him to attend, and I'll be there to observe his reactions," Melvin said with determination. The plan felt risky, but it was our best chance to gather additional evidence. We scheduled the dinner for 2 weeks later, enough time to wrap up all the legal preparations. The event would take place in the parish hall, a familiar setting where Curtis wouldn't suspect anything unusual. I invited him personally, keeping my tone casual as always. "It'd be good to see you there, son. It's been a while since we've all gotten together." He accepted without hesitation, even showing some enthusiasm for a family gathering. His ease unsettled me deeply. How could someone act so calmly after trying to kill their own father? His silent revenge was also revealed in the way he could fake normalcy so convincingly. The police team planned every detail of the operation. 2 undercover detectives would attend the dinner disguised as regular guests. They'd carry discreet recording devices to capture any incriminating statements. Dr. Harper coached me on how to guide the conversation, asking questions that might lead Curtis to contradict himself or reveal something compromising. "Stay calm, Henry. Let him talk. Just steer gently toward the topic of the gift." The responsibility of playing bait for my own son was nearly unbearable, but necessary to protect others. Melvin showed surprising strength throughout the preparations. Though still recovering from the effects of the poisoning, his determination to see justice served kept him going. "He needs to understand that elder abuse doesn't go unpunished," he said, rehearsing the questions he planned to ask about the whiskey. Gloria handled the event details with military precision, making sure everything looked natural and spontaneous. The irony of using a charity dinner to expose an attempted murder wasn't lost on any of us. It was as if the situation itself demanded this final performance. The days leading up to the dinner were filled with growing tension. I rehearsed every word I might say, every reaction I might need to control. The weight of knowing I was about to confront my own son with evidence of his crime was crushing. I barely slept, barely ate, and spent hours staring at old family photos, trying to understand how we ended up here. The betrayal ran deeper than I had realized. Margot always used to say that true love takes courage. I never imagined I'd need to be brave against my own blood. Dr. Whitman held a final briefing the day before the dinner. "Remember, the goal is to get spontaneous statements. Don't push too hard. Let him feel comfortable enough to speak." The detectives showed us their discreet equipment and explained the signals they'd use if anything went wrong. Melvin and I confirmed our roles in the setup, while Gloria finalized the venue arrangements. The silent abuse I had endured for months was finally about to meet its public reckoning. I left the station knowing that, no matter the outcome, I had done my part to protect others from Curtis's coldness. The night before the dinner, I sat in my study and looked out the window, watching Curtis arrive for a final casual visit before the event. He seemed relaxed, even cheerful, as if he truly expected a pleasant family evening. We chatted about trivial things, and he even asked if Melvin would be there. "Of course," I said, watching his face closely. "He's doing much better. Got past that issue with the whiskey." For a split second, I saw something flash in his eyes. Maybe satisfaction, maybe disappointment. Tomorrow, the mask would finally fall, and we'd all see the real face behind the son I thought I knew. The parish hall was decorated with elegant simplicity. White flowers and candles created a warm, inviting atmosphere. Guests arrived gradually, greeting one another with the familiar warmth of a family gathering. Curtis walked in right on time, wearing a dark suit and a confident smile, hugging relatives and chatting as if nothing had changed. The two undercover detectives blended in seamlessly with the crowd, one chatting about business near the bar, the other helping arrange tables. Melvin arrived with Gloria, still visibly weak but determined to be present. I watched everything from a distance, heart racing, waiting for the right moment to begin our carefully planned performance. The first couple of hours passed with light conversation about family, work, and future plans. Curtis seemed genuinely relaxed, laughing at stories and sharing updates about his professional life. His ease disturbed me. How could someone appear so normal after attempting something so horrific? Melvin moved from group to group, accepting well wishes on his recovery and downplaying his recent hospitalization. "Just a bit of illness," he'd say. "Thankfully, it's passed." The detectives remained in strategic positions, discreetly activating their recording equipment. Only those of us who knew the real purpose behind the evening could feel the tension beneath the surface. During dinner, Melvin found the perfect moment to steer the conversation. "Curtis," he said, raising his voice just enough for nearby tables to hear, "I still need to thank you for that special whiskey you sent to Henry." A brief silence fell over the nearby table as Curtis chewed slowly before replying, "Oh, right. It was my pleasure. I hope you both enjoyed it." His tone was controlled, but I saw his hand tighten slightly around his fork. Melvin went on, "That whiskey had quite a story. The taste was unique." The irony in his voice didn't go unnoticed, and Curtis shifted in his seat, showing the first signs of unease. The conversation picked up momentum as other family members became curious. "What whiskey was it?" asked a cousin, genuinely interested. Curtis tried to deflect, but Melvin pressed on smoothly. "It was a special batch, wasn't it, Curtis? Batch 14, if I recall correctly. You mentioned it was made for rare occasions." The mention of the specific batch made Curtis choke slightly on his wine. His eyes darted around the table, searching for a way out. "I don't remember giving that much detail," he said with a nervous laugh. The silent revenge he had orchestrated was beginning to turn on him. That's when I decided to step in. "Curtis, there's something I need to share with the family about that gift." My voice cut through the room's chatter, drawing everyone's attention to our table. I slowly pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of my jacket and placed it on the table with deliberate care. "I found out some interesting things about that whiskey." Curtis visibly paled, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to keep a straight face. The elder abuse he had so carefully plotted was about to be exposed in public. "Dad, I don't understand what you're trying to say," he muttered, but his voice betrayed a rising panic. I opened the envelope methodically, pulling out the toxicology report first. "This is the chemical analysis of the whiskey you sent," I said, passing the document around for others to see. "It confirms the presence of toxic substances in a concentration high enough to cause serious harm." A ripple of disbelief spread across the table as Curtis stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "This is insane. You're making this up." His calm mask had finally cracked, revealing the desperation and anger he had kept hidden. Melvin stepped forward to block any potential exit, while the detectives began to quietly close in. The family betrayal was now laid bare, in all its cold-blooded cruelty. I pressed on, unwavering, pulling out more documents from the envelope. "Here's the confirmation from the distillery about the irregular batch you ordered, completely outside all safety protocols." I showed the emails and payment records proving his direct involvement in the production of the tampered whiskey. "And these are the statements from Melvin and Gloria about your reaction when you found out the gift had been passed on." Curtis tried to deny everything, mumbling confused explanations about misunderstandings and coincidences. But every word he uttered only further confirmed his guilt to everyone watching. The hall had become an improvised courtroom, where the truth was finally coming to light. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence, unable to process the severity of the accusations. "Curtis, is this true?" an aunt asked, her voice trembling. "Did you really try to poison your own father?" The question echoed through the heavy silence in the hall. Curtis looked around, seeing only horrified and accusing faces. His breathing grew erratic, sweat beading on his forehead despite the mild temperature. "You don't understand," he muttered. He didn't deserve it." His fragmented words only revealed more about his true motivations. The cold, calculated way he had planned the crime clashed with the desperation he now showed. That's when the two detectives stepped forward and identified themselves. "Mr. Curtis, I'm Detective Johnson," one of them said, flashing his badge. "You need to come with us to answer some questions regarding the attempted murder charges." Curtis tried to resist, claiming he was being set up, calling it a conspiracy, but his protest sounded empty next to the overwhelming evidence. The detectives cuffed him with professional composure, reading him his rights as he continued to insist on his innocence. The guests watched in complete silence, some in tears, others frozen in shock. Curtis's wife stepped back visibly, denying any knowledge of her husband's plans. The hall emptied quickly after the arrest. Family members left in small groups, whispering about what they had just witnessed. Some came over to offer their support, while others avoided eye contact entirely as if guilt could spread by proximity. Melvin stayed by my side, placing a hand on my shoulder in a silent show of support. "You were brave, Henry," he said softly. "It wasn't easy, but it had to be done." Gloria held my other hand, her tears a mixture of sorrow and relief that justice had finally been served. The weight of what had just happened began to settle heavily in my chest. Dr. Harper arrived shortly after the initial commotion, confirming that all legal procedures had been properly followed. "The recordings and witness accounts will fully support the case," he assured me. "Curtis will be formally charged with attempted murder." Knowing that justice would be done brought some comfort, but it didn't ease the emotional devastation of exposing my own son as a criminal. The evidence was undeniable, the witnesses credible, and his own reaction had sealed his fate. The silent abuse I had endured had finally met its reckoning, but the price was the complete destruction of any hope for family reconciliation. I stayed alone in the hall for a few minutes after everyone had gone, staring at the still-set tables, the flowers slowly wilting under the fading candlelight. The irony was cruel. An event meant to bring the family together had become the stage for its final collapse. I looked down at the now empty envelope in my hands, remembering all those nights spent compiling that evidence. The betrayal had been fully exposed in all its cruelty, but the victory tasted bitter. I grabbed my coat and walked toward the door, knowing that night marked the end of an era. I would never look at Curtis as my son again. From now on, he was just a stranger who had tried to kill me. Curtis was tried and sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder and tampering with a food product. His wife filed for divorce shortly after the arrest, claiming she had no knowledge of his criminal plans and was shocked to learn he had hidden details about my health and the whiskey incident. The separation process was quick and uncontested. She just wanted to distance herself from everything connected to that nightmare. During the hearings, I kept my distance, watching my son accept his sentence without showing any real remorse. The same coldness that led him to the crime was still there, confirming I'd made the right decision. The last family tie broke the moment the cuffs closed around his wrists. Melvin's health fully recovered in the months that followed, though the incident left invisible scars on his trust. He and Gloria moved into a smaller house in another neighborhood, hoping to start fresh far from the memories of those dark days. Our relationship evolved into a respectful friendship, built on weekly phone calls and occasional lunches. We never spoke directly about the poisoning again. The subject remains buried under layers of courtesy and mutual care. Melvin resumed his community activities, always with Gloria close by, as if she were his silent guardian. They found peace in simplicity, and I'm genuinely glad for that. I moved to a small town 2 hours from the capital, where I rented a modest apartment overlooking a tree-lined square. My mornings start with strong coffee and the local newspaper, followed by walks through the main plaza where I greet the same neighbors each day. I've built simple routines, shopping at the market on Saturdays, matinee movies on Thursdays, gardening on the balcony over the weekend. The anonymity shields me from unwanted questions and the pitying stares I still felt in the big city. Here, I'm just Henry, the quiet retiree in apartment 304. Solitude doesn't haunt me the way I thought it would. I officially cut all ties with Curtis. No letters, no visits, no contact of any kind. I revised my will, removing him entirely from the inheritance, and informed Dr. Harper for legal purposes. His photo was taken out of every frame in the house, his gifts donated to charity, and any physical reminder of our relationship was methodically cleared out. It wasn't revenge, it was self-preservation. Some betrayals are irreversible, and pretending they can be forgiven would be dishonest. The son I raised died the moment he chose to poison me. The man in prison is a stranger who just happens to share my last name. I've come to understand that dignity doesn't lie in forgiving the unforgivable. It lies in protecting what's still precious within ourselves. Margot used to say true love takes courage, but I never imagined that the greatest courage would be cutting off what's already rotten at the root. Today, sitting on the balcony watching kids play in the square, I know I chose life over resentment. I don't carry guilt for what Curtis became, nor pride for what I was forced to do. Just the certainty that at 66 years old, I'm still worth protecting. The days go by peacefully, and that alone feels like a victory. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the right. Thanks for watching.